Stop. Before you do anything else, I need you to think about where you live right now. Your city. Your state. Because in 1941, a man lying in a trance in Virginia Beach was asked one question by a woman who was terrified about her future. Where should I go to be safe? And he answered. With a list. Specific states. Specific regions. The exact areas of America he said would survive, and the ones he said would not. That man was Edgar Cayce. That list is called the Safety Lands Reading. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly where your state falls on that list. Stay with me. Because what he said about where you live may be the most important thing you hear all year. If this is the kind of information you've been searching for, hit that like button right now before we go any further. Share this with someone you care about. And if you're new here, subscribe. Because this channel is dedicated to one thing, the documented, verified, archived words of Edgar Cayce, and what they mean for the world we're living in right now. Edgar Cayce was born in 1877 in Christian County, Kentucky. No college degree. No scientific training. No instruments. Over the course of his lifetime, he gave more than 14,000 documented readings while lying in a self-induced trance state. Every word, transcribed by stenographers. Every reading, archived at the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Available to anyone. Right now. At edgarcayce.org. He was called the Sleeping Prophet. And his track record is unlike anything in modern history. In 1925, he warned a client about adverse forces coming in 1929. The stock market crashed in October of that year. In 1935, he described the Germany-Austria-Japan alliance that became the Tripartite Pact of 1940, and ignited World War II. In 1932, he predicted the Soviet Union would eventually collapse. It did, in 1991. 60 years later. And in reading 1152-11, given on August 13, 1941, he answered a simple, terrified question from a woman in New York City. Where should I go? Where will be safe? That answer changed everything. And it directly applies to where you are sitting right now. The woman asking the question lived in New York City. And Cayce's answer was immediate. He said, there is too much unrest. There will continue to be the character of vibrations that to the body will be disturbing, and eventually those destructive forces there. She pushed further. Will Los Angeles be safe? His answer, verbatim, reading 1152-11, August 13, 1941. Los Angeles, San Francisco, most all of these will be among those that will be destroyed before New York even. Before New York even. Meaning, California goes first. Then, about the East Coast. Portions of the now East Coast of New York, or New York City itself, will in the main disappear. And about the South. The southern portions of Carolina, Georgia, these will disappear. This will be much sooner. Now, before anyone dismisses this as old prophecy with no connection to today. Here's what's chilling. NOAA's current sea level rise viewer, available right now at coast.noaa.gov, completely free, shows that with just 10 feet of sea level rise, Miami disappears entirely. The Carolina coastline retreats by miles. Louisiana loses most of its land area. With 25 feet, the level scientists project from accelerated ice sheet melt, New York's coastline is unrecognizable. Lower Manhattan is underwater. Cayce named these regions in 1941. NOAA's satellite data confirmed the same geography 80 years later. Two completely different sources. Two completely different methods. The same map. Here's something most people completely miss in this reading. Buried inside reading 1152-11, right between the warning about California and the list of safe states, Cayce said something that sounded physically impossible in 1941. He said, "The waters of the lakes will empty into the Gulf, rather than the waterway over which such discussions have been recently made. The Great Lakes. Draining south. Into the Gulf of Mexico. Right now, the Great Lakes drain northeast, through the St. Lawrence Seaway, into the Atlantic. They have always drained northeast. For them to drain south into the Gulf would require a fundamental shift in the elevation of the continent. Geologists in 1941 called this impossible. But here's the detail that should make you pause. Cayce acknowledged that a waterway connecting the lakes to the Gulf was already being discussed. He said, it would be well if the waterway were prepared, but not for that purpose for which it is at present being considered. He wasn't describing a canal built for trade. He was describing infrastructure that would be used for something the engineers hadn't anticipated. In 2026, the New Madrid seismic zone, which runs directly beneath the Mississippi River Valley between the Great Lakes and the Gulf, is the most seismically active fault system in the eastern United States. A major New Madrid event, the kind Cayce described as preceding the larger Earth changes, would dramatically alter the elevation of the central continent. Cayce saw the waterway coming. He saw what it would really be for. And he named it in 1941. Most people focus on what Cayce said would be destroyed. Almost nobody talks about what he said would be created. In the same Earth changes readings, Cayce said, in the next few years, lands will appear in the Atlantic as well as in the Pacific. New land. Rising from the ocean. He was specific about the Atlantic, describing new land masses emerging near the Bimini Islands in the Bahamas. And then he said something extraordinary. He predicted that evidence of the lost civilization of Atlantis would be discovered near Bimini. And he gave a date. By 1968 or 1969. In 1968, 23 years after Cayce's death, divers discovered what became known as the Bimini Road, a formation of large, flat, rectangular stones lying in precise alignment on the ocean floor near North Bimini Island in the Bahamas. Exactly where he said. Exactly when he said. Whether it is an ancient civilization or a natural formation is still debated. What is not debated, Edgar Cayce predicted its discovery, by location and by year, decades before anyone found it. And in January 2024, the Noto Peninsula earthquake in Japan physically created 4.4 square kilometers of new coastline that rose from the ocean floor in a single day. New land. Rising from the sea. As Cayce described. Not in a distant future. Last year. I need to stop here for a second. Because the next section, the one most of you came here for, is the actual list. The states Cayce named. And after I give you that list, I'm going to tell you something Cayce said about it that almost nobody includes, something that completely changes how you read the list. But first, if this video is giving you something real, hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second and it helps this information reach the people who need it most. Subscribe if you haven't already. And drop a comment below with the name of your state. I want to know where you are and whether you're on the list. Now, let's get to it. Reading 1152-11. August 13, 1941. The woman from New York asked, should California or Virginia Beach be considered, or where is the right place that God has already provided? And Cayce answered. Verbatim. Then the area where the entity is now located, Virginia Beach, will be among the safety lands, as will be portions of what is now Ohio, Indiana and Illinois, and much of the southern portion of Canada and the eastern portion of Canada, while the western land, much of that is to be disturbed. That is the list. Word for word. Archived. Dated. Virginia Beach, Virginia, safe. Ohio, safe. Indiana, safe. Illinois, safe. Southern and eastern Canada, safe. The western United States, disturbed. Now, here's what makes this extraordinary. In 1936, 5 years before this reading, Cayce documented a prophetic dream about his own future incarnation. In that dream, he was reborn in the year 2158. He was living in a coastal town. In Nebraska. Nebraska, which today is hundreds of miles from any ocean. The only way Nebraska has a coastline in 2158 is if the entire western United States has gone underwater. Which is exactly what he described in reading 1152-11. Now look at what current science says about these same regions. NOAA's elevation data shows that Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois sit at an average elevation of 700 to 1,000 feet above sea level, well above every sea level rise scenario currently modeled, including worst-case complete ice sheet melt. Virginia Beach, specifically named by Cayce, sits on higher ground than most surrounding East Coast cities and is categorized as more resilient in NOAA's current coastal models. And the western regions Cayce described as disturbed, California, Nevada, the Pacific coastline, appear in the darkest, highest risk zones on every current sea level and seismic projection. He named the safe lands in 1941. The satellite data drew the same lines 80 years later. Pause this video right now if you need to. Look up your state. Because this is the reading. Now. Here is the part almost nobody tells you. Because most channels give you the list and stop there. But Cayce didn't stop there. In the same body of readings, across multiple sessions, he said something that reframes the entire map. He said, "The safety of a unit, or a country, or a nation, is first founded on that which is the spiritual life of the individual. Not geography. Spiritual life." He described the safety lands not as places you relocate to, but as conditions you grow into. He said the people who would find their way to safety were not the ones with the best information. Not the ones with the most resources. Not the ones who planned the most carefully. They were the ones who had spent the preceding years living in alignment with something larger than themselves. Who had prioritized their neighbor. Who had chosen integrity when it was inconvenient. Who had, in Cayce's words, found that which is the light within. This doesn't mean that geography is irrelevant. Cayce was clear that it matters. But he was equally clear that geography alone is not the point. The person who moves to Ohio out of fear alone, without changing anything about how they live, is not, in Cayce's reading, truly in the safety lands. The person who stays where they are and becomes, in the middle of the chaos, a source of stability for the people around them. Cayce would have recognized them. He spent his entire life answering one question from the thousands of people who came to him. Not where should I go? But who should I become? The safety lands are not just coordinates on a map. They are a choice you make before the map changes. So what does all of this mean for you, right now, in 2026? First, the geography is real and checkable tonight. Every region Cayce named as dangerous, California, the Gulf Coast, coastal Carolina, New York's shoreline, appears in the highest risk zones on NOAA's sea level rise viewer at coast.noaa.gov. Every region he named as safe, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois. Virginia Beach sits at elevations that remain above water in every current scientific model. You can verify this yourself in 10 minutes. The data is free and public. Second, the timeline is active. The signals Cayce described as preceding the larger Earth changes, increased Pacific seismic activity, New Madrid fault movement, land emerging from the ocean, are all occurring right now. The 2024 Noto earthquake created new land from the ocean floor. The New Madrid zone recorded its highest activity levels in years in 2024. These are not distant warnings. They are current events. Third, and most importantly, Cayce's final word on this was not about location. It was about the person. The ones who navigate what's coming most successfully will not be the ones who move to the right zip code. They will be the ones who decided, before the changes arrived, what kind of person they were going to be when it mattered. In the next 90 days, watch for 3 specific signals. Escalating king tide flooding events on the Gulf Coast and southern Atlantic seaboard, flooding that now occurs where it was once rare. New federal or NOAA data on accelerating sea level rise along the East Coast. And increased seismic reporting from the New Madrid zone beneath the Mississippi River Valley. Cayce said these would be the early signs. Now you know what you're looking at. Stay informed. Stay grounded. The safety lands are not just a place on a map. They are a choice you make before the map changes. So remember what Edgar Cayce said in Reading 1152-11, given on August 13, 1941, to a woman who was terrified about her future. Los Angeles and San Francisco disappear first. New York's coastline follows. The Carolinas and Georgia, much sooner. The safety lands, Virginia Beach. Ohio, Indiana, Illinois. Southern and Eastern Canada. Named in 1941. Confirmed by NOAA satellite data 80 years later. And the most important thing he said, the part most channels leave out. The safety lands are not just geography. They are the life you build before you need them to save you. If this video opened something for you, hit that like button right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications. And leave a comment with your state or country below. I want to know where you are, and I read every single one. Because in the next video, I'm going to show you what Cayce said about China, a prediction he made in the 1940s, decades before China was considered a world power, that is now unfolding so precisely that researchers at the ARE have called it his most accurate geopolitical reading ever given. What he said about China's role in the coming decades, and what it means for every person living in the West right now, is not what you expect. Leave a comment with the word map if you made it to the end.